Welcome everyone, I'm Dale, and this is Cinema Historia. Witty and pretty sisters, New York City, and successful hopes. This week we're going back to 1955 for a comedy musical called My Sister Eileen, starring Janet Leigh, Jack Lemmon, and Betty Garrett. And this is directed by Richard Quinn and screenplay by Blake Edwards. So where does our story begin this week? Well, it begins with witty Ruth and pretty Eileen Sherwood, played by Betty Garrett and Janet Leigh. They are sisters from Columbus, Ohio, who have relocated to New York City, settling into a rundown basement apartment in Greenwich Village. Ruth aspires to be a writer, while Eileen hopes to achieve success as an actress. They become acquainted with their neighbor, Ted Loomis, an athlete who lives with his fiancée, Helen. Ruth has a letter of introduction to Bob Baker, played by Jack Lemmon, editor-in-chief of Mad Hatter magazine. Rushing off for vacation, Bob tells her she should write about things she knows rather than the artificial stories she had sent him. Eileen, finding herself the target of unwanted advances from a theater producer, goes into a local store for lunch. Soda fountain manager Frank Lippincott lends a sympathetic ear and offers to introduce her to any theatrical people who come in for lunch. As time progresses, Ruth collects a lot of rejection slips, and Eileen fails to secure any auditions. Meanwhile, newspaper reporter Chick Clark overhears Frank telling Eileen about an audition. He claims to know the producer as well and wants to help. Upon arrival at the theater, they discover it is a burlesque house where striptease is the main attraction, leaving Eileen upset and rushes out. Bob returns from vacation and meets with Ruth to tell her his favorite stories are about Eileen and her romantic misadventures. Ruth claims the stories are not about her sister, but actually about her own experiences. Not believing her, Bob asks Ruth for a date. Interested but not wanting him to find out the truth about her stories, Ruth declines the dinner date. So does Ruth get her story published? Does Eileen finally get a proper audition? Do they both start careers and romances, or do they both pack their bags and return to Ohio? The screenplay by Blake Edwards and Richard Quinn is based on the 1942 play by Joseph A. Fields, which was inspired by a series of autobiographical short stories by Ruth McKenney, originally published in The New Yorker. An 83% rating from the movie critic Rotten Tomatoes, and user reviews state such claims as charming film and very underrated, lovely underrated musical, one of the best undiscovered gems, tap your feet and laugh, and a joyously fun musical comedy with delightful singing. And that it is. And the trivia question this week: was there a store in this film that still exists today? Was there a store in this film that still exists today? So, a little more history and the answer to our trivia question coming up next. Now, since there's a dance sequence and a bandstand in our film, I thought it might be interesting to talk about the history of bandstands. So a bandstand is a circular or semicircular structure set in a park, garden, pier, or indoor space designed to accommodate musical bands performing concerts. A simple construction, it both creates an ornamental focal point and also serves acoustic requirements while providing shelter for changeable weather. During the 18th and 19th centuries, this type of performing building was found in the fashionable pleasure gardens of London and Paris, where musicians played for guests, dining and dancing. They were later built in public spaces in many countries as practical amenities for outdoor entertainment. Many bandstands in the UK originated in the Victorian era as the British brass band movement gained in popularity. The Industrial Revolution worsened conditions in urban areas, which increased the need for green open spaces where the general public could relax. The first bandstands in Britain were built in the Royal Horticultural Society Gardens, South Kensington, in 1861, solidifying their huge popularity by the end of the 19th century. To assist the war effort during World War II, iron fittings were removed from many bandstands to be melted down and transformed into weapons and artillery, so many fell into disrepair. With funding from the National Lottery and Heritage Lottery in the 1990s, over 80 bandstands were fully restored or replaced. In England, a semicircular bandstand named Eastbourne Bandstand was built in 1935, which replaced the bandstand that stood on cast iron stilts. Totally enclosed with a stage and cafe area topped with copper-clad domes. In the United States, gazebo bandstands appeared after the Civil War of 1861 to 1865. They accommodated the brass and percussion bands found in towns of every size. They were found in parks, courthouse squares, and fairgrounds. Following the World's Fair of 1893 in Chicago, amusement parks based on the famous Midway became popular, and the 1928 Hollywood Bowl shell and streamlined concrete band shells like it became popular in the 1930s, and since became landmarks in parks across the U.S. And there's a bandstand in my local area in a little town called Colborne, Ontario, Canada, which is halfway between Toronto and Kingston. And in the center of the town is a park, which is called Victoria Square. And in the park, there is a bandstand. And they have what's called Music in the Square. They can be found on Facebook. It's called Music in the Square, Colborne, Ontario. And they have live local music that's free between the months of June and August. And they play Thursday nights, 6 until 8:30 p.m. A lot of fun. And the answer to our trivia question this week, was there a store in this film that still exists today? Certainly is. Walgreens Drugs. Yes, the Walgreens Drug Store, shown prominently on the girl's first day of job hunting, is still doing business as of 2022. Pretty cool. I hope you like my videos. And if you do, can you help me keep me dancing along the way and hit the subscribe button? And if you're an existing or new subscriber, a big thank you goes out. I gotta go. I gotta check up on the girls. I want to make sure they're happy with their new apartment. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope to see you back next week.
From now on, you can call me Papa. I'll have it fixed in the morning. Good luck.
Well, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. Mr. Papa, where's the door?